On the diplomatic side, I think what will be happening is that the Secretary of State or his representative now, because I gather he's flying back from Peru, will be asked to canvass the world's governments to try to ascertain the level of support we're getting from all of the key countries. We need a coalition against terrorism, and that coalition has to be more than just our NATO allies who are committed by treaty to defend the United States if it comes under attack, but also countries like Russia and moderate Arab states and other countries, perhaps even the Chinese, to commit with us in this battle against terrorism, so that if the Osama bin Laden organization is proved to be responsible, that those countries support us in whatever measures we need to take, not to act in revenge, but to act to prevent them from doing it again to another civilized country, because this is just the beginning of what they see as a permanent campaign against the United States and the civilized world. So I think all of those steps are being taken. And finally, there is a reassurance that has to take place, and I think President Bush has done a good job so far, but he and his administration need to do an even better job today, tomorrow, and in the weeks to come to reassure not only the American people that all these steps are being taken, but to reassure the financial markets, to make clear that the United States nerve center of commerce in Wall Street may have been attacked, but our nerves are made of steel, and we're going to go forward and continue our daily business in the business of America, because that's what these terrorists are trying to prevent. And he needs to convince every American citizen that they need to get up in the morning and do all the things they used to do, and do them perhaps with more care and more caution, but to not let the terrorists win by changing our freedoms or changing our habits.
James Rubin, former State Department spokesman from London. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Washington, D.C. was in the crosshairs of terrorism. Senior White House correspondent John King and national correspondent Bob Franken on the scene for us this morning in the nation's capital. First, let's go to John King. John.
Well, Vince, in the hours ahead, look for the administration to move aggressively on several fronts. First, an effort by the White House to make the case the federal government is doing all it can for the rescue and the relief operation. As part of that, there will even be a symbolic blood drive on the White House grounds this morning. Also, Secretary of State Colin Powell will be out making the round of morning news shows, also delivering remarks here in Washington, promising a thorough investigation and promising, as Jamie Rubin was just speaking about, to reach out to governments around the world to build a new coalition against international terrorism. Now, the president will awake this morning and be briefed once again by his national security team. He will also have a bipartisan meeting with the congressional leadership at the White House and deliver some public remarks after that statement. That, an effort by the White House to show continuity and resolve that the government is at work, even as the investigation and the rescue and relief efforts unfold. Now, Mr. Bush last night delivered a nationally televised address to the nation, certainly a defining moment for this president on a defining day for the country. Mr. Bush, speaking to the American people from the Oval Office, said the nation was gripped by what he called a quiet, unyielding anger.
The pictures of airplanes flying into buildings, fires burning, huge structures collapsing, have filled us with disbelief, terrible sadness, and a quiet, unyielding anger. These acts of mass murder were intended to frighten our nation into chaos and retreat. But they have failed. Our country is strong. A great people has been moved to defend a great nation.
Now, Mr. Bush also said as the investigation continues, the United States would make, quote, no distinction between the terrorists and those who harbor them. The administration publicly saying the investigation continues privately, though we are told, at a national security briefing at the White House last night, as well as in private briefings to key members of Congress. Senior administration officials are saying that they are confident the evidence collected so far points to the suspected Saudi terrorist Osama bin Laden and associates and organizations affiliated with him. The administration promising to take retaliation when its investigation is completed. One official I spoke to last night after this meeting said they were going to take their time. This official saying they wanted to make sure they sorted this out before acting. Again, look for more words from the president later this morning after he receives an update on the latest on the investigation, as well as the relief and rescue operations underway at the Pentagon and in New York City. Vince.
Well, John, in reading some of the information you've transmitted to us overnight, United Flight 93, which crashed in Pennsylvania, may have had a more specific target. I wonder if you can elaborate on that.
Still some speculation involved in this, but we are told that law enforcement officials and other administration officials in their briefings to key members of Congress said that based on the information they have so far, they believe that that plane was turning south, heading toward Washington. Three possible targets. One, the presidential retreat of Camp David outside of Washington in Maryland. More likely, though, according to our sources, the White House or the U.S. Capitol. They believe that plane was ultimately headed for Washington. No explanation yet as to why it crashed in Pennsylvania, but that is what we are told. Key members of Congress are being told as the investigation unfolds. At least so far, they believe that the target for that plane was here in Washington. Vince?
White House senior correspondent John King, thank you very much. We'll be checking in with you throughout these early morning hours and into daylight on Wednesday. Well, the Pentagon is the nation's military nerve center and an important symbol of U.S. strength. On Tuesday, September 11, 2001, it was a target. Officials now say as many as 800 employees died in the attack on the Pentagon. CNN national correspondent Bob Franken is here with the latest. Bob?
Well, this morning, when regular business hours occur, there's going to be an attempt at a small victory. That is to say that the Defense Secretary has ordered that parts of the building that can be open for business will be open for business. That is a small victory over the big loss of yesterday when a plane crashed into it. You can see it in the back of me. We're going to find out, or start to find out as the day unfolds, just how significant, how big that loss is. Once daybreak occurs, officials are going to check to see if the fire has receded enough that they can go into the building, start combing through the rubble, and finding out in human terms just how many casualties there were. That, of course, is going to be an extended process. The Pentagon has just steadfastly refused to give away any information about the number of people who they expect might have been killed. They're talking about figures that might go into the hundreds, although the Pentagon says that some estimates that have gone as high as 800 may be far too high, but they're going to find the grim task of doing that. They're going to start that this morning. Business is still going on at the Pentagon. There is still military planning going on. There are some efforts, in fact, to make sure that the United States remains protected on both coasts. Flotillas of military ships, including aircraft carriers, have been sent to sea on both the east and west coast and along the coast of Hawaii to protect against any contingency. Nothing is expected in particular, but of course, this tragic day was not expected yesterday. Vince?
Bob, before we let you go, President Bush talked about how important it was to have business go on as usual. You touched on this. And how important is it to show some semblance of order, things taking place as they should at the Pentagon?
Well, it's going to be difficult to do that. It's quite interesting. Only about half of this building is really considered safe enough to conduct business, although, of course, it was not half that was really wiped out by the airplane that crashed into it. You can see in back of me there were 3 of the corridors that were hit. There is actually 17 miles of corridors in the Pentagon, and about half of that is going to be considered structurally unsafe, at least not proven to be safe, but that other half is going to be open for business. That is the half that will include so many of the vital functions here, the Military Command Center, the offices of the top-ranking people, the secretaries and deputy secretaries. Business will be going on there, and of course, it's business in time of crisis.
Thank you very much. CNN national correspondent Bob Franken.
Well, Vince, amid the chaos in New York and Washington, there was another hijacking and plane crash, and this time it was in Pennsylvania. United Airlines Flight 93 crashed in a field near Pittsburgh. There were 45 people on board, and no one survived.
What we're doing is maintaining the scene. We have 150 troopers, both mounted on horseback and on foot, in 2 separate perimeters, keeping the scene as pristine as possible. Protect it for the further investigation and to make sure that no one is injured through a biohazard or wants to get into the crime scene.
And just a few minutes ago, John King reported that government sources are telling CNN United Flight 93 was likely headed for a government target, possibly the White House, the Capitol, or even Camp David.
Well, so many people have outpourings of emotion. We'd like to hear from you, and to do that, you can contact us by email at this address, daybreak@cnn.com. Please include your name and where you are writing from, and this might be an opportunity for you to express your views on this terrible, terrible turn of events.
Also, as a service to our viewers, Vince, some of you might want to grab a pen or pencil throughout the day. We're going to be broadcasting telephone numbers where you can call for information about passengers, flights, that sort of thing. So these numbers will run throughout the morning. So go ahead and prepare for that if you need to. Also, a handful of people who died in the plane crashes had one last chance to say goodbye to their loved ones. In fact, one man called his family in San Francisco from United Flight 93.
That I love you very, very much in case I don't see you again.
I said that.
That the plane has been taken over by hijackers. And then I said, well, we love you very much too, Mark. Let me go get your mother.
I got on the phone, Mark, and he said, hi, Mom, this is Mark Bingham. Giving me his last name. And he said, I want to let you know that I love you. And I'm flying. I think he said I'm in the air. I'm calling you on the air phone of the airplane.
In his seat.
I presume so. He said, I want you to know I love you very much, and I'm calling you from the plane. We've been taken over. There are 3 men that say they have a bomb. And I said, well, who are they, Mark? And he repeated that he loved me, and he said, I don't think he said, I don't know who they are. He became distracted there, as if someone was speaking to him, and he said it's something to the effect of, it's true, and then the phone went dead.
Her son, Mark Bingham, was on the flight that crashed in that field near Pittsburgh. Now, John Ogonowski was the captain of American Airlines Flight 11, and his plane crashed into one of the Twin Towers at the World Trade Center. His family spoke out yesterday.
I ask all of you for your prayers for, as I refer to him, as Brother John. And I ask you to also pray for our whole country today in this tragedy that's impacting our whole country.
Mr. Ogonowski leaves a wife and 3 daughters. Vince?
4 planes hijacked and brought down in one day. It has many questioning the safety of the sky. Paul Baum is the editor of Aviation Security International, a former security chief at TWA, and he joins us from London this morning. Good morning, Mr. Baum.
Good morning to you.
Sir, this is the question that many Americans are asking right now. How could this happen? How could 4 commercial airliners be hijacked in the morning? And it's just beyond belief. How did it happen?
Absolutely, it is an absolute tragedy, the real nightmare scenario for the aviation security industry and, of course, for the American people and the world as a whole. The only thing that could have been worse would have been if it had been a chemical or biological attack on one of these cities. It would appear that the real failing has been on the intelligence side in preventing these incidents. In the past, intelligence has worked. You only have to go back to 1995 when American intelligence basically thwarted, in what was known as the Bojinga plot, the blowing up of 12 American airliners on one single day. That day, American intelligence worked. September the 11th, 2001, unfortunately, it all fell apart. And the pictures that we've all been witnessing are those of really of a war scene. You could have been seeing those pictures of the Balkans or of the Middle East, and yet this was downtown Manhattan, downtown Washington. And that just sort of reminds me of...
Excuse me, Mr. Baum, you talked about the overall picture and intelligence, but what about the basics of airport security? And that is these people commandeering a plane. Would we be shocked at how easily that can be done and how easily it might have been done yesterday?
I'd love to say that I was shocked. Truth is, I wasn't. I was shocked by the outcome and the fact that probably at least 12 people could have decided to go to their deaths in such a tragic manner and bringing and killing so many other innocent people in the process. Yes, airport security procedures are going to have to be reviewed, especially domestically in the United States. I don't think it's a surprise that they targeted American Airlines and United Airlines, basically the two giants of the aviation industry. It used to be Pan Am and TWA. It's no surprise that they targeted flights that were going to the West Coast, to San Francisco and Los Angeles, so that on impact, those planes would have been carrying far more fuel than any other aircraft in the sky, so the impact would have been that much greater. But certainly domestic aviation security is going to have to be reviewed. But that said,